I want to do something that's net positive for the world. Like everything you do should actually be net positive. Like you want to feel good about what you're building and what you're doing.
Today we have Zeb Evans.
Today we're here with Zeb Evans, who's the founder and CEO of ClickUp, and a well-dressed gentleman.
He's a serial entrepreneur that started several software companies with over $100 million in revenue.
Our whole mission is making the world more productive, saving people time. And ClickUp is a productivity platform where you can put all of your work in one place.
What I really came to the conclusion was that we were inflating people's egos on social media and that we weren't actually doing anything good,
so
good
so
for the
you
world.
decided, what did you decide to do in the business?
Shut it down.
You just shut it down?
Totally
you
shut it
didn't
down.
Sell it?
Well,
You gave up a business that made you $4 million, just shut it down. So I've got Zeb Evans in the studio with me today. Zeb, welcome.
thanks for having me, Vinny. Happy to be here.
That's awesome. Awesome. Great having you. We're going to break the ice with some nice wine. We've got some Colgan 2013. What do you think of it?
Very nice, very smooth. I love the rich taste. It's awesome.
Very well balanced, good acidity. Colgan's one of the greats out of Napa Valley. So I think, I wanted to start off by introducing you at a very high level and then letting you give yourself a good introduction and get more deeper. But, Zeb's the co-founder and CEO of ClickUp. I would describe it as a productivity tool for the workplace. And he covers pretty much everything in that. It's a fantastic tool, and he's got a ton of users and subscribers, and raised around at a $4 billion valuation about a year or two ago, and just killing it. And he's based in San Diego, where I am, so he's one of the business heroes locally. And I thought I'd get him into the studio and tell us about your life story and, how did you get from where you started to where you are today? It's a pretty impressive story. So why don't you jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born, and how you got to San Diego?
So I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I literally cannot remember a day when I was alive where I didn't feel like I wanted to sell something or create some experience for others to sell. And I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, actually a small town called Pofftown outside of Winston-Salem. And I, from an early age was always had some type of hustle that I was doing.
What was your first hustle?
My very first one, the first one I remember where I got in trouble in a lot of my hustles. And when I was in first grade, I was selling candy out of my lunchbox. I sold like Warheads and all the little candies you could get. And I actually got suspended in first grade. My parents were actually, I remember my parents being upset at the school that they suspended me in first grade for selling candy, but kids were giving their lunch money to me, instead of buying actual lunch. So that was definitely my first kind of like one that I actually remember. But every time that I got gifts when I was like, whether it be Christmas or my birthday, I was always asking, there's this company called Oriental Trading Company, which did like wholesale novelty toys. And so I was always asking, not for toys for myself, but for toys to sell to other kids.
So you were what, 6 years old, 7 years old?
Yeah.
So I had some experience, different generation. How old are you now?
34.
So I'm 44. And so different generation. But when I was, I think 7 or 8, I was selling Thundercats stickers. Remember Thundercats?
No.
You don't remember Thundercats?
No.
Oh, man.
So what was it?
It was a big, it was like an 80s craze, like He-Man, Thundercats. It was kind of the same era. So we get these stickers and we get these books used to collect, and then you have these foil stickers, and I just wanted the foils because they were the best ones, right? So I would like get my parents to buy me the sticker packs, and I would sell them individually to kids in grade school, and same thing. They used their lunch money to buy stickers.
It reminds me of the Pokemon card craze here.
Exactly.
That's what I tried to get a hustle in there too, but that one didn't work out.
Different generation, but yeah, it's like repeats itself, right? Every 10 years, new kids born, different craze.
There's always something more.
Okay, so you start off there. You realize you like selling and being an entrepreneur. What happened next?
Yeah, I so when I was 10, this was 4 years ago or so, and there was not access to technology where I was. Nobody really had I'm sure the internet existed, obviously, but nobody really had access to it there. I don't remember any of my friends having computers or anything.
It was early days.
Yeah, it was the very early days. We didn't have cell phones. But I was in a really bad accident when I was 10, and I was in the hospital for 2 months.
Wow, sorry.
And through that period,
what was a car accident?
It's actually a jet ski accident.
Jet ski,
accident, yeah.
Where were you jet skiing?
This small lake called High Rock Lake in North Carolina.
Oh wow! By yourself? On a
At a
jet ski?
friend. I was at a friend's house.
Were you like doing solo jet ski?
No, there was two of us, and it was it was safer than it sounds at 10. And I had done it before, but basically just pulled up to the dock where there's this thing that you have to put the jet ski on. So it's like you gotta get some power up there, and I just kind of missed it, and jet ski kind of flipped, and I fell off and hit the side of the dock, and it like cut my stomach open, and I kind of blacked out. But I was
sitting here today. That's good.
Yeah, no, everything happens for a reason. Like it was like that's part of this is part of the story, right? Exactly. It's part of the journey.
Like Steve Jobs says, you can always connect the dots looking backwards, not forwards.
Exactly, exactly. And so it felt like it was a young age to get like woken up to the fact that you're not invincible and that life is short. And I think that I carried that with me. But more importantly, during this story, they had a little small TV in the hospital, and I swear almost every commercial was about food. It was like McDonald's, and I couldn't eat. They were pumping my stomach. I couldn't eat or anything for about a month, and so I couldn't watch TV. But they had a laptop in the hospital, and I got the laptop, and I just was like mind blown. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy, and I found. I believe Alibaba like just came out maybe that year or something, and so I found Alibaba, and I was like, my mind was blown to all the possibilities where I could like buy things in Alibaba and sell them on eBay, and that's exactly what I started doing. And the first thing I found was DVDs.
Okay, gray DVDs.
Yeah. Disney DVDs actually. So
were they gray or originals? Be honest.
They're a little gray area, but there was this arbitrage, and Disney used to do this thing called the vault, where it was a marketing tactic.
Yeah, I remember that.
Where they would put DVDs in like this fake vault, but they essentially just wouldn't sell them anymore.
Oh, you couldn't rent them at the video stores either. They would pull them back.
Yeah, I think they pulled them out of everything. Where it was like
video rental stores,
and they wanted everybody to join like their Disney club to get the DVD or something like that. But all it did was create this huge variance between supply and demand. You know. So I remember Snow White was selling for over $100 a pop on eBay, and I could get it for $8 on Alibaba, and it was coming from Sri Lanka. And so I would get them, and it came the first time I ordered them, I expected, DVDs like in a full package DVD set, and it was just the sleeve inserts. It had the artwork and the disc, and that was it. So I knew I couldn't sell those, and so I got online. I found these white Disney DVD looking cases for them, and I got a little shrink wrapper, and I shrink wrapped them myself, and then started shipping them and selling them, and it became a good hustle where I went from selling just kind of individual ones to selling like what they called like lots of them. So I'd sell like 20 at a time, or 50 at a time. But that was where I got into trouble, where my dad, and this was probably
how old were you?
This was probably a year later, so I was around 11.
11 years old.
Yep.
Okay.
And my dad called me to the front door in that voice where you're in trouble, you're fucked. And I got to the front door, and there's these two like FBI looking guys there, and they like looked at me, and they looked at each other, and they just started like smiling, they're just like, oh my God. And so they were bootleg DVDs, but they thought it was my dad because I used his PayPal account and his eBay account and stuff. So they just kind of gave me a slap on the wrist. Yeah.
That's great. Okay. You were destined for greatness from that moment, right?
Yeah, right. I knew I was going to go somewhere after Disney DVDs.
Okay. So what was it? So you obviously shut down that business.
Yeah. Yep.
What is the next thing you did?
Abercrombie cargo shorts. So they had these cargo shorts. I don't know why I remember the price, but they were exactly $49.50 retail on the tag. And so I could get them, found a supplier through Alibaba, and I got Abercrombie cargo shorts, and I think they were like $12 or $13 landed, but I could sell them for like $30 online.
How much bulk did you have to buy?
One box, and I think it was like, I think it was like 10 or 20 pairs at the time. Okay. It was something small.
Not too bad. Yeah,
it was something small.
You just thought it was small.
And they had, they would ship the pants, so they'd ship the pants in a box, and then they would ship like an envelope from, I think it was a shipping company called TNT. I don't even know if they're around anymore, but it was an international shipping company. It was called like TNT. And I would always be waiting for the TNT package because it came separately, because those were where the tags were. So then I got this tag machine, on eBay, and you just put the tag on. They could only ship them without the tags, and then you put the tags on them there so that they were
so you
brand
would get
new.
the Abercrombie tag that you would add to the clothing afterwards.
It was the same
Okay,
supplier.
this was definitely gray.
Yeah, this was great also, but at least I switched industries.
Okay.
So those were.
And you were how old? 13, 12?
I was probably 13.
13,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So no juvie hole or anything for that for you.
No, this one was fine. I actually just like lost the supplier stopped answering me one day, and I don't never know what happened, but I stopped selling those.
Okay.
And I went skiing for the first time in 7th grade, which I guess would have been right around this time. And I grew up in a small town, North Carolina, and there was not skiing there, so I went with my friend's like church group or something that went up there to the mountain, and I fucking fell in love with skiing. Like it was like this was like
Skiing's
my
great.
passion.
I love skiing.
And my parents didn't ski or anybody in my family, so I went online and I found these schools where you could ski every day.
Yeah.
They're called like ski academies or ski schools, and there were a few in New England. And I told my parents, and they're like, "Yeah, right. Like you're not going to that." And I actually applied online, and kind of forged their signature to the school thing, and I somehow got like a 50% scholarship there. And I told my parents, and they were actually very, very supportive. And so I left home when I was in 8th grade, and I stayed there for 3 years: 8th grade, 9th grade, and 10th grade.
So you were boarding there for 3 years at ski school.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. So you must be an amazing skier.
Yeah, I think I still got it. I didn't ski last year, but 2 years ago I did, and I
Double
definitely-
blacks.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Have you ever done heli skiing?
No, I never did heli.
Okay.
We did ski alpine ski racing, and there it's a very different type of like. We actually don't like powder. We like ice. Like very
I hate
ice down.
I got sniped in some ice the other day.
Really?
Or a couple of years ago, it hurt me badly. Hit a rock and like went flying like I don't know 30 yards.
You got to wear a helmet. Too many people don't wear helmets nowadays.
That was an issue. The problem is I landed on my stomach and it was just like I hurt myself. I got a hernia or something.
Damn. Yeah, not necessary for you. I just mean people in general. Like it's like there's so many people don't wear helmets, and I saw so many head injuries.
And I was slapped on a green.
Really?
It was in Tahoe. It was just icy and like whatever. It was crazy.
Yeah. So up there, we actually started. It wasn't a real company. It was called Bayonne Clothing. Bayonne was this. We looked in France for like a small. Me and my friend who was in the dorm at the time, we looked for like a small town in France because we thought it would sound like bougie for a clothing brand. It was called Bayonne. And little did we know, there's also this like town, this really shitty town in Jersey called Bayonne, and so everyone up there associated with Jersey. But we got these shirts and we started selling them. They were just like.
This is grade 9 or 8, 9, 10?
This would have been in 8th grade, end of 8th grade.
You started grade, okay.
Yep, end of 8th grade. And we started selling them at school, and people started wearing them. But the school was not supportive of. It was a very small school. It was in place called Bethel, Maine, and it was like 1,000 people there, including the people in the school. And it was very kind of like on the kind of very liberal side where they were kind of anti-business. Yeah. And so they started teaching me how capitalism is bad and, all these other things. And they're like, we don't want you selling things.
Most schools are like that today. They don't want kids selling like candy and shit. It's crazy.
Yeah. Man. Yeah. So my next thing was that next year, and I came back in 9th grade. I don't know if I should tell the story or not, but
you're in 9th grade.
Yeah,
I think the statute of limitations or whatever you did has passed.
Yeah. Okay,
so let's go with it.
So so I couldn't sell anything public anymore, so I started selling alcohol. And up in the school,
I think you're safe right now.
And and exactly, and so there was like this their version of the prom called the snowball, and there was a anyway, people got in trouble for alcohol, and they were trying to look who was supplying, and the head of school like called everybody to assembly, and he's like, if you come forward, no, you're not going to get in trouble if you come forward today. And I was like, fuck that, I'm not coming forward, like I'm not falling for that. And then I'm good, nobody's how are they going to know? And then 2 hours later, I get called to his office, and they're like, I understand you go by, Ski Racer 13 on AOL Instant Messenger. And I was like, oh shit.
I'm screwed.
They had all my messages because it was like an internet area, and they had all of your messages. So That was my ninth grade hustle.
Okay, and they didn't kick you out of school.
They did not. They suspended me for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
Got
So if you get suspended for 2 weeks, you can still make it and build $1 billion company. That's something important to keep in mind.
You win some, you lose some.
You win some, you lose
you
some.
win some, you lose some.
I'll give you a quick story background. So when I was grade 8, myself and there was one other guy, and I won't say his name because he's still around, that knew how to use the computers in the school. Like it was like 20 terminals or something, and we were I think they were called media monitors, like because back then it was just like multimedia, right? And we were the guys who knew how to like use. I mean, I was pretty proficient with DOS back in those days. It was before Windows. It was 1992 or 3. I think it was 2. Anyway, so we were the only 2 guys in the whole school who actually knew what they were doing. And guess what happens? I get called to the principal's office. Just me. They found porn on the school computers. And he blamed me. And I was like,
He threw you under the bus?
it wasn't me. And I'm like, it was him. We were the only 2. It wasn't me, and it was not me. It was him.
You know it was him.
But he threw me under the bus, and I was like, dude, you like saving your own ass here. So, so I had my fair share of run-ins at school. I once got accused of selling marijuana in school, which I did not do. It was crazy. All this weird shit happened.
Sure you didn't?
Huh?
You didn't?
It was not me. I never touched it.
All right. All right.
So
I believe you, Vinny. I believe you.
But it was funny. Like if I was selling marijuana, I'd be like, I wouldn't be making as much money as I was doing other shit I was doing. So
Yeah.
I was actually doing pretty well in my other little gigs. But yeah, school's a strange place. Okay, so you you finished up with that business. I'm guessing.
Yep.
Alcohol was kind of done. What next?
DJing. So
You're still at school.
I was still at school.
Okay.
I was still. This was 10th grade,
10th grade,
and
okay.
I started.
Man, you haven't even gotten to your adulthood, and like
No.
this is what an adventure.
So I started. I downloaded this program called Virtual DJ, and I started learning how to DJ. And I always loved music, but I didn't have any kind of musical skills, or so I thought. So I started just learning how to do it online and learning this producing program called Fruity Loops back then. I think it's called FL Studio nowadays. But I would start doing the events at the school, so I'd be DJing at the school. They didn't pay me, but I was, still kind of doing that as like what I thought was my hustle. And I came back. I left that school at the end of 10th grade because I had several friends. I mean, everybody there wanted to go to the Olympics. And I never wanted to go to the Olympics. I just loved skiing, but I always wanted to go build businesses. That was my thing. And so I realized it was the perfect time to. I had a friend that got injured pretty bad, so I also realized it's risky and time to get back to North Carolina. And so I came back, and 10th grade summer, I started my mobile DJ company where I started going around and DJing. It was mostly like Sweet 16s and things like that in North Carolina, but it was very lucrative.
What did you charge per gig?
There was I think the first time it was like $100 an hour.
Oh wow!
Because you could, the going rate was even more than that. I think it was like $200 an hour. So I just undercut it at everybody, but it was very lucrative. And it takes, of course, a couple hours to set up, and you got to buy the equipment and things like that. But I started getting booked and booked more, and then I started networking some people there, and I started working at a radio station called 102 Jams. It was a hip hop radio station in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they paid me like nothing. It was like $20 to $25 I DJ'd for 20 minutes on the 5 o'clock traffic jam. And it actually cost me more in gas money to get over there because it was like 40 minutes, and then I was in the traffic jam also, ironically. But I got kind of a bigger name there where I would start being able to charge more. And
what is your DJ name?
DJ Curfew.
DJ Curfew.
DJ Curfew.
I love it.
Yeah. I was DJing, and somebody wrote on my Facebook wall. I had to be home at midnight or maybe 11, and somebody was like, "Great job last night, DJ Curfew," and it stuck.
It's like, okay,
stuck.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so was that like? So how much did you make a month? Like a couple $100?
It was a few thousand at least.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a few thousand because
that's
I would do it usually twice a weekend, and
Your side hustle as a kid before you finished high school was making a couple $1,000 a month.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I also was working at I worked at Lowe's Foods, a grocery store after school in North Carolina. So I would go there and I did the produce section. So I'm great at chopping fruit and stuff.
Fantastic. So what did you do all the extra money? So you're making all this money and you're what, 16?
Yeah,
What
16.
did you do with the money?
I always wanted to go big and investing in myself and kind of doing something bigger. But what I would always do mostly is like re-up. So I would you get DJ equipment. It's like you can get a small DJ board for like, I don't know, $100, $200, something like that. But to get the real equipment, it's like, $2,000 per thing. So you can get, your actual equipment could be like $6,000 or more.
You're buying more
And
stuff.
so I would just keep kind of ring up, improving, and the sound equipment is totally different. I mean, that can be $10,000, and then the lighting equipment's another thing, another $10,000. So I kept ringing up and having the best equipment possible.
I'll take a second break here. Like, this is an important topic. I think not enough people spend enough money on the tools of the trade. Mm-hmm. They always try to hustle, and they get the cheapest thing, and they kind of prove it out, and they just try and milk the profits. And in my experience, like, you probably don't need to, like, when we started my first company, we bought secondhand laptops. I mean, it was good. Like, we bought some secondhand Dells. We were able to get the work done. And then we noticed after a while, like, the processing speed was very slow. It would take like freaking 2 minutes to open a spreadsheet with 50,000 lines in it, and we were doing like large volume in there. And we started investing in better PCs, and it made a difference. You're saving, it seemed like insignificant, but like you save 30 minutes a day waiting.
It adds up.
It adds up.
Yeah,
it adds up very quickly.
up.
So like productivity tools, I mean, you build a productivity tool company. Like, if you can shave off 10, 15, 20 minutes a day on a couple of tedious tasks, it makes a huge difference over weeks, months, and years. And I think not enough people invest in themselves. When they start making money, they kind of pocket it, they want to save. And and I've seen businesses that didn't invest in the business itself, and they kind of get beaten by their competitors because they didn't do that.
I always doubled down on myself.
I'm with you.
And always did that. And I think when you're doing it, it's kind of, it's hard to do. It's easier said than done, right? Because you're like, oh, I could go do this. I go on this trip, or I could buy this, or buy this car. And I actually did buy a car. I bought a car on eBay, and I thought I was going to get scammed. And my parents told me I was going to get scammed. Everyone told me I was going to get scammed, but it arrived, and I actually got a decent car on eBay.
And like, my philosophy has always been, since a young age, since I was 20-something, 21, my first car, I always bought like the safest car I could afford. For me, it wasn't about driving a BMW or driving a Mercedes or whatever, an Audi. It was like, it's actually a safe car. And I actually was in an accident with a Mercedes, and I was very lucky because the guy hit me on the side, and I wasn't injured because it's a reasonably safe car. If I was driving a tin can, I would have gotten injured pretty badly. And so I've always had the perspective that you just invest in yourself heavily. So I spend, I'm not even kidding, probably $1,500 to $2,000 a month in supplements, health supplements. I take everything from krill oil, magnesium supplements, fatty 15, 80K. I take a lot of supplements, and it's just, my health is pretty good. Like, my blood markers are all fantastic for the stuff I'm doing.
Does it make you feel better also?
I feel better, yeah. I feel great. I mean, I sleep pretty well. I invest in things like I have an 8 sleep in my bed. Do you have one of those?
No, I've witnessed one though. At my friend's house.
It's phenomenal. Yeah. Like, it changed my sleep habits. Like, it's like $2,500, and it cools me down at night. And I'm able to sleep at the temperature that I feel comfortable at, which is about 68 degrees. Whereas if you just sleep in a normal bed, you kind of warm up above that, and you like wake up. My sleep patterns have been so much better with that. But I spend a ton of money on both, like, in my personal capacity, like just living well and eating good food and cutting out seed oils and all that stuff. Like, I eat, good food, healthy food, and I drink great wine because the shitty wine that they make, which is like mass produced, I just don't touch that stuff.
That makes you feel bad.
It makes you feel bad. You have these high congeners, and you have hangovers the next day. And then from a work perspective, even in the companies that I've started, I've always told people, look, you have to be stupid about buying software, but like, buy the best software we can afford to do the job, and stuff that saves us time and saves us money. And it's that mindset of like reinvesting in yourself and in your business, which you clearly got. I've got, and I think I see it in a lot of entrepreneurs. The successful ones reinvest, and they say, look, they don't try and cut corners. Even when we did this podcast instead of the studios, we bought the best mics that could do the job, the best video recording equipment, etc. And we didn't cut corners on that. I think it's a big deal because people actually see the quality of what you're doing, whether it's a company or personal health or whatever.
100%. It matters, and it's like you're saying, it's the tools for everything, right? It's the tools for you, your health, your mindfulness, but also the tools for productivity and the tools for brand perception matters so much. I learned that at an early age too, and you know, the DJ story was very typical of that also, where if you had good equipment, you were taken more seriously, and that's, you know, what I took to ClickUp as well. It's like we always invested the things that made our obviously the tools that we use, but also more so like the brand, the appearance and perception that you have, because as a startup, you've got to punch up. You got to appear bigger than you are, and you want customers to take you seriously. And it's really hard to do that as a startup sometimes. But there are a lot of ways that you can make yourself appear bigger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we haven't finished high school yet. Keep going.
So I actually continued that through high school, through and then I went to Virginia Tech, and in Blacksburg, Virginia, and because I never really wanted to go to college, but you know, society tells you to go, and parents tell you to go. Everyone tells you to go, and that you're a failure if you don't go. Yeah. So I was like, fuck it, I'll go to college.
Well, it's not even so much that. I mean, I famously don't have a degree. I dropped out of my final year at University of Cape Town because I didn't have the funding. The emerging markets crisis happened. And when I tried getting jobs in Johannesburg, the moment they saw that my degree was incomplete or I didn't finish the degree, they would not hire me. I think I probably applied for 500 jobs over like 3 years. And I got a couple of jobs here and there, but before I started my first company, I got declined everywhere because, you know, nobody wanted to hire anyone without a degree.
And I've changed that about our company. We don't look at degrees at all. We don't take it into account at all. We don't care. And
Elon doesn't either as well. He also said they don't look at it anymore.
Yeah, I don't care about it. Yeah. And so I don't have my degree either. Actually, I only went there for a year and a half. And I think but it's very true still that's the caveat, right? Is that most careers do care about the degree. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, you know, there are careers where I think you need to.
Let's discuss why. And I think it matters for the same reason that people buy IBM and software, you know, in the world. Like historically, it's you don't get fired for buying IBM was the old adage from the early 2000s, 99s onwards, right? So when you're hiring a degreed individual at your company and they screw up, it's like, well, yeah, he went to Harvard or he went to some school, and therefore it's not my fault for hiring him. And so it's kind of the same. I think it's the same implied, like safety check for people who are middle managers or senior managers in a company when they scared. Well, if I hire like the best Ivy League guy, I can't get like into trouble for hiring him if he screws up.
Yeah,
and so it's cover your ass versus like the ability to ascertain that someone is really intelligent and knows what they're doing. And taking a bet on that person, well, that's a gamble because, like, if he screws up and I let the other Harvard guy go, like, my boss is going to kill me because he liked this guy. So, I think it boils down a lot to the brand recognition of the university or school you went to, and the fact that the person has a degree makes you feel comfortable hiring them because generally people work in companies who have these positions where you have to hire and build teams or whatever else. They're pretty much more risk averse, and so they see it, the perceived risk of being that person with no degree is a higher risk than someone with a degree.
I totally agree. I think it's a risk, and there's some real kind of perception about people based on their college degree. At least I think it's changing way more now, especially in tech. But growing up, it was very much if you go to college, you're smart. If you don't go to college, you're dumb. Yeah. And if you went to one of those great colleges, you're a fucking genius.
Exactly.
And so it was like the people hiring are also betting on the perception of having that degree to some extent as well.
Some of the worst employees I've had and I've had to fire were Ivy Leaguers.
Same.
It's crazy, right? Yeah. I'm not going to call out specific schools, but it's the big names we all know. And I'm like, you're just like, if I call out my top 3 worst employees, they're all Ivy Leaguers in my history. And like, we're talking hundreds, maybe 1,000 people easily.
Jumping forward a little bit, but it relates to that. The only company I've ever invested in, I think still today, I don't invest. I know I'm a terrible investor. I'm like the world's worst investor. If I buy something, everyone should sell it. If I sell something, everyone should buy it. But I invested when I was like 23 or 24. I know I'm jumping forward, but we'll go back. And there's this company called Crunch Button. And I was in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time, and my brother went to UNC, and he had a friend that started this company that did food delivery through an app. And I was like, this is fucking brilliant. You can press a button and get food delivered to you. This is absolutely brilliant. And his company was actually acquired by Crunch Button. His was called Order Carolina. And so I went out there. They were in Santa Monica in this little office out there, and they were crammed in like 100 people in the smallest office. But it was like the definition of not even controlled chaos, like startup chaos. And everybody's on the phone, you know, like there's dogs walking around shitting everywhere, and like it was just like the craziest
It's
thing.
very Santa Monica.
But I was like, wow, this is, you know, I've never seen anything like this before. But it was 3 or 4 Harvard guys that started it, and I had actually driven for the company to see what it was like. And so I went out there and kind of delivered food, and there were so many things wrong, like with the way that it was done, just the inefficiencies. And one of them was they had a target market of colleges, which I think was a bad strategy in the first place. But they grew through colleges, and the order addresses were never right. They could never be validated through a Google Maps or anything.
This is like a dorm room or whatever it is, right?
Exactly. It's like a dorm room, you know, this dorm and that. And you go through the order process, and on the order form, there's one address field. They would not add city or state or zip code or address to or apartment number. And I talked to them about it. I was like, hey, can you guys, you know, add this? So like, well, at Harvard, we learned that less fields on an order form leads to higher conversion. And I'm just like, what the fuck?
This is the problem, dude.
You know, what the
This is the
fuck?
problem.
And so I was like, if I invest, are you guys going to change this stuff? And I gave them a long list of things to change, and I did invest. And you know, that was my last investment, because it was just like they didn't change it, and they went with their way, and all of these just
And DoorDash
these
killed
dumb
them.
anecdotes that you learn from schools that they take them too literally.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you.
And that's what happened. And sure enough, I wrote them this letter. I have it framed at my house. And I was like, if you don't do this, and this, there's going to be these billion-dollar revenue companies that come along and just stomp you. And then, you know, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Postmates, all of them started coming.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I think I think we you know, there's a lot of obfuscation that happens at universities. So they take like some of the first principles that we learn in the field building companies. And it's like, oh, we'll nitpick the takeaways from this, and they don't understand like how you got to the conclusion in the first place, and that's the problem. And so, I guess it applies, like obfuscation happens in many ways, and applies to hiring as well. So you think about it, like the brand association of yourself in university is, you know, the perception is that, oh well, you know, Harvard had this massive application process. You were one of the 2% people who got in, therefore you got through this filtration process. Therefore, you must be good. And it's just it's inconsistent for what I've seen in the real world.
And there's, you know,
Actually,
there's.
I'll tell you a funny story. Like one of my best employees, and this is back in South Africa, was a guy who, like one of the smartest guys, hardworking guys I've worked with. He was a guy who actually did a correspondence course. And then I looked at this and I said, wait, hang on a second. This is a trend. Because I found another guy like that, and then a few others. And then I started realizing some of these people, and it may apply to South Africa in particular, maybe not the US, because obviously the markets are different and the situations are different. But in South Africa, back in, I'd say 20 years ago, the guys who couldn't afford to go to university, but were still determined to get a degree, would go to the correspondence, which is University of South Africa, and they would sign up for courses, and they would work by themselves. There's no classes. It's correspondence. You get the material, you read it, and you do the exams, and you hopefully you write the exams and pass. Those were the guys who I loved hiring, because the self-discipline it takes.
They figured it out themselves.
To do an online course with no school, and obviously it's a lot cheaper, and so the price doesn't matter. You get a similar education. You still write the same university type exams, but you were self-motivated, and most of the time there's kids from poor families that just didn't have the money for university, and they went these courses. Some of the best employees I've ever had.
Our best engineers are the ones that are self-taught.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
You know, hands down. That's what I index for, and that's what I look for in recruiting. It's like, find the self-taught people. Some of them did go to college, many of them did, but they also were self-taught before that. And it's just a huge difference in the way that they see the world, but also how fast they are at coding.
And not to, I don't want to put shade on people who like have, you know, worked hard at school, applied for good universities, and got in there. I think that's important. That like, congratulations. But I guess what we're saying is that that's not the only way to prove yourself in the world. Okay, there are other ways to prove yourself, and just because you worked hard and got there, it doesn't mean you should be able to rest on your laurels and go, well, I have this degree from XYZ Ivy League school, and therefore that degree makes me effective in the workplace. It doesn't work that way.
And there's exceptions to everything too. Is what you're bringing up, and there are many. I mean, like even Stanford, I would say is an exception in many ways in tech, where you can go there and actually learn real things from people that have done it before. Whereas most schools, I'd say 99% of them, you're learning from people that are teaching who have never done it before.
Absolutely.
They're literally teaching you from a textbook or from something else where they've never run a business in their whole life. They never run a tech business. So there are the exceptions there, but it's always good to think about that as, who are you learning from, right? Because you can if you're really taking everything that you're learning at face value, then you're only as good as your teacher. Yep. But if you're learning on your own, you can do things differently.
Self-motivation.
Got to do it differently.
Self-motivation is a perfect it's a perfect indicator of success. Like if you can be self-motivated in the toughest of conditions, and we hear this story all the time, by the way. It's always the poor kid in a town in Africa studying by candlelight who becomes a NASA engineer. Like those are the one. It's the people who are willing to work through the most adverse situations to become successful. And so these are the stories I love telling and listening to. It's because I know it's not easy. As someone, like my first 3 years of not having a degree before I started my company, sucked. I felt like a second-class citizen because I just didn't have a degree because nobody would hire me.
Yep.
And the people who did hire me because, well, he's smart, he can figure this out, and that was great. And it's actually, I'm friends with my old bosses because they actually at least gave me a chance and they trusted me. But they were the ones who, funny enough, actually. The last boss I had, he wasn't the guy who actually hired me, but his boss was a Harvard guy, and he was phenomenal. We go along really well, and like I learned a lot from him working with him for about a year and a half before I started my first company. And so again, I'm not saying anyone from Ivy schools are bad and you can't learn from them, but like the lessons you learn are not always applicable in the real world.
The adversity thing you bring up matters so much. In fact, one of the questions we still ask people I always ask is, what's the hardest thing that you've ever done or been through? And usually people always answer it in the work context. And then I'll say, what about your personal life? What's the hardest thing you've ever done or been through? And many times you get a non-answer. And the non-answer is just like they haven't been through anything, right? They're going to be very, very soft, and every little thing's going to ruffle their feathers, and they're going to be people that are always complaining about things. But the people who have actually been through some shit, it's very different mentality.
The flip side is, I mean, I know from my personal experiences and probably others that I've looked at, like some people who are raised with all the opportunity in the world, well, I'd say some people are raised like with all the I wouldn't say opportunity. Some people are raised with like the benefits of being in a wealthy family or whatever the case was. They want something more. They don't really want to be part of that. Like when I was in high school, my final year, grade 12, the kids all thought I worked for my dad. My dad had a success, we kind of grew up poor up until a certain point. I think it was maybe I was 12, 13. My dad's started a business, started making some decent money. Parents, my mom and dad worked together. So by the time I was 18, I used to work in their business and make some money for myself. They used to pay me by the hour. So that was my entrepreneurial journey, being part of a family business. And when I was in my final year, everyone's trying to figure out careers and where you're going to go in grade 12 afterwards. Everyone in the class thought I'm going to work for my dad forever. And I was like, fuck this. I am not going to be my dad's son and just like be a family business. I'm going to go forge my own way in the world. And for me, I had the privilege of just doing that. And then, as it turns out, my dad's company went, kind of bankruptish in 1999. So I couldn't finish my degree. But I went to study, and as it winds up, I had to pay the student loans off myself because my dad couldn't pay it. So I got lumped with all the student loans and whatever else. And even though I came from a reasonably privileged background before that, I went to this like pool of adversity, whether it was not having a degree or having student loans, university fees to pay back. But I wanted something more.
Yeah.
And that's the important thing. It's like when you want something more, it doesn't matter whether you come from a privileged background or you willing. Like I left my hometown to go study in Cape Town. So I just didn't want to be seen as being, part of a privileged background. And it's kind of funny because it wound up being, it wound up teaching me a lot being on my own for a while. Even at university, I had to like make my own money.
Exactly. Well, it's all relative too, and so people go through different things in life based on their backgrounds and where they are. But there is, I think, a certain subset of, especially in the United States, where it's more of this kind of culture around give me everything and entitlement culture.
Yep.
And that's kind of what we're more screening out through our interview process.
I found this very strange when I first moved to the US. People would walk across the street without looking at cars coming at them because, hey, the light's green. And in Africa, you do not do that. If the light's green, you still check for vehicles because there'll be someone driving across the road. But and for me, it was kind of weird because if you think about it this way, if just look across the road to see no one's coming and just make sure you're safe versus just trusting the green sign and walking, it's in Africa, you may get hit and you will get killed, okay? And in America, it's like, well, if I get hit, I'll sue. And well, what happens if you did? Well, I don't know. So it's just very weird. Like there's a sense of so there's a survival skill you get out of places like Africa, I think that Americans take for granted.
100%. And I think that's a little bit why you get into that entitlement culture is because you're not worried about the basics anymore. Like everybody has the basics. Generally speaking, the basics are there. You're worried about something else, and it's not like the survival piece.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's keep going on the chronology here. So you so this was.
Yeah, so that was 11th grade, and then in 12th grade I continued that, and I think I was just saying I started going, DJ. I started getting to Virginia Tech, and I carried that business there, but turned it more into an entertainment company where we would put on larger scale events and manage the whole ticketing process through the operations, the project management, doing all of that stuff. And so that's probably where I got deeper into project management and kind of organizing how to run a process. But I also started working with a rapper I found at the college. I started managing him and doing his social media. His name was Killa J. His name's KJ. He actually works at ClickUp today. He's our creative director. But I started managing him, and we had some really good songs, and we went on a small tour circuit with some other bigger name artists, and I found one of the problems there was people had just started really using social media, especially for businesses and brands. But at the time, if you had a couple thousand people inside of a venue, you had no cell phone service. And so we couldn't send anything out about the event. We couldn't tweet live from the event or Facebook.
We still had the problem back then. Stadiums.
Yeah, I guess you still kind of have that to some extent. But these were just small areas. And so that kind of set a problem in my mind that set me up for later. But we did that for about a year, and actually a year and a half. I was in my second year, in the middle of my second year, and I actually got robbed at gunpoint in a home invasion, and a 17-year-old kid put a gun to my head.
Where was this?
In Blacksburg, Virginia.
Virginia, wow.
Yep.
So you were at Virginia Tech?
I was at Virginia Tech.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
And that was I had a roommate there, and we were both put in the closet together, and the gun was to my head, and he was behind me, and it just everybody talks about these near-death experiences where you have your life flash before you and stuff, and I didn't really have that, but I had this moment of just extreme clarity where I saw the path that I was on and what I thought my potential was, and I knew I needed to change some things for sure. I mean the music industry can be a great industry for sure, but it also has its downsides, and it's very much like a kind of party culture, and it's hard. It's a tough, really tough business, and it wasn't really the life that I wanted to live, and so the other thing I realized though was that college certainly was not, and that I was totally wasting I wasn't even going to classes. I'm getting straight A's, this doesn't even make sense, and so I literally that next day, I was like, if I get out of this, talking to the universe or God or whatever, I was like, if I get out of this, I'm going to drop out of school, and I'm going to, change the course in life. And I had no idea what changing that course meant, but I had always been, and I skipped around some things earlier, but after I was 10, I also started playing with building websites, and I would used to use just WYSIWYG editors with GoDaddy had one and things like that. But I also started learning basic HTML and CSS. And so I wanted to double down on that, and that the next day, I I had PTSD for probably 6 months where you just are scared of everything. You know, you don't want to get. I didn't want to get out of my car.
I don't blame you.
And so I literally dropped out of school and had a falling out with, you know, my parents. Everyone was very
But
much.
did you get any like counseling or anything to help you get through it?
No, I didn't. I
I think
didn't.
you should have.
It's always hard saying if you would have changed something, because I don't know what would have happened, right? Maybe I needed to go through this harder journey myself, and I think I did to some extent, because I was basically driving. Or I lived in my car for like 2 months because I was way too scared to go back to my apartment where everything happened near Starbucks. Okay. So there was a Starbucks.
24-hour Starbucks.
There was. No, it wasn't 24. No, we didn't have 24 hours. We didn't have 24 hours. No, I would get internet at Starbucks. So I would go to Starbucks and work and learn during the day. I was learning PHP at the time because that was the that was the node of back then. And I was learning PHP, but I was just scared shitless to go anywhere close to Blacksburg.
Like if you were living in your car, where would you park your car?
Across from Starbucks, literally in the Starbucks parking lot.
And at night, the Starbucks is closed. You by yourself? Did you feel
I'm
scared?
by myself. I'm sleeping.
You didn't feel scared in the car?
I did not. I felt way less scared there, and a bumfuck like 30 minutes away from Blacksburg where nobody was there, versus going back to Blacksburg and thinking that those people were there.
So you literally were homeless. At one point.
I literally was homeless for a few weeks. Yeah.
This is a great title for our podcast, from homeless guy to $4 billion company.
I wouldn't call it true homeless, but I still, I still had money for food, and I knew I couldn't go back to anywhere in Blacksburg. My friends, I couldn't go stay at friends' houses because they were also in Blacksburg.
That was pretty traumatic.
Very
traumatic. So like you did what you have to do to protect yourself, like at least protect your mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I eventually got to a point where I was less scared than I was before, and actually went back to Blacksburg and stayed at my friend Chris Cunningham, he's now our head of social media at ClickUp, and everybody along our journey we ended up hiring back, which is funny, but I went back there.
That's looking backwards, right?
It's funny looking back, yeah. But I learned PHP in a few weeks, and I started building this tool that could. First thing was automating the post on social media, so you could send a post and schedule it. Which
this is like Buffer or before Buffer?
Exactly. I don't know if Buffer existed back then, honestly. Yeah. I maybe it just started, but I certainly didn't know about it, and I don't think anybody else really in that circle knew about it. But the other thing, and that thing actually wasn't that people wouldn't really pay for that. But what people would pay for was gaining more followers on social media. Mm-hmm. And so I also built this script that would basically automatically follow people and then unfollow them. And so then this was
I had that happen to me. I had a celebrity, I will not say her name. She followed me, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's following me. And then like a couple of days later, she unfollowed me. Like, oh. And I hadn't posted anything, so I knew it was a bot.
And at the time, everything's changed now because these tools are everywhere. All this automation is everywhere. But at the time, nobody was doing that, right? And so if somebody followed you on social media, 15 years ago, you were like, holy shit, somebody followed me. I'm going to follow them back. They're following me for a reason. And then we would just go unfollow so that you didn't have this weird following versus followers count. And so,
what was the ideal ratio of followers to following?
I mean, you definitely do not want 1-to-1. Like 1-to-1 is so definitely less, way less.
5-to-1's good.
Way less than 1-to-1. Yeah, 5-to-1 would be great. And it all totally depends on also how many followers you're
like
talking on the. That's good. That's a good ratio. Ben. Good ratio. This was the thing that people would pay for. Right? This was the thing where I could go to the.
This is 2010.
Yep, 2010.
Okay, 2010. You started this business,
yep.
And tell me can you talk about the revenues, how you built it, like what was the growth rate?
I mean, the first month was hundreds of dollars. It was nothing, but I would get them on before I knew what SaaS was or like subscription businesses, I would get them on this recurring model where I'd say, hey, and I started with cash. It was the people that I knew in the industry. It was rappers that I knew. I'd be like, hey, do this, and I'd get them followers. Yeah. And then eventually I built a website called Fast Followers with a Z, and I started. I did organic growth hacking. I would use the same system that I built to automatically send people messages. So I would send people messages saying, hey, do you want to get more followers? go to this website. And I started driving traffic to my website through that. And after I did that and I automated it, like I think it was like $10,000 in a month that I got. And I was like, holy shit, like this, I'm onto something.
You were spamming, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah, the rules, there were different rules back then. You know, the terms of service and stuff wasn't there. But I just
no judgment.
I thought like, holy shit, you know, this thing is I can create a living with this. And I found you know, and I was always like pretty technical, but I'm not like the person to sit down and code all day. And so I found this guy through a Ukrainian job board that I started hiring on the side just for like 5 hours a week to start building more of the features that I wanted, and also building into the website. And they didn't really have there weren't, you know, the like CRM tools of the world that would also, like the Shopify's that also connected with your actual website experience. So we had to start building our own. And that was the first real kind of product that we built, was like this internal CRM that would also process orders. And that was how I learned, I think, so much in tech today. It was just going through that journey. And I'm speaking, I mean, this is now, you know, 3 or 4 years later, we did that and made probably $4 million cash.
Wow.
Profitable.
For the year?
Just for all three or 4 years. And it was about 25 employees.
Oh, wow.
And
so that's $4 million after salaries, expenses.
After everything.
Wow.
After everything.
Yeah.
And so it was about, probably 25 employees. We were in Charlotte, North Carolina, how I jumped forward. And that was kind of when I invested in that company. And then I had my third near-death experience. I was at a movie theater and I had a seizure. And if you have seizures, it's always one of two things. It's always you either have epilepsy or there's something like neurologically wrong, like something else. And my dad had a really bad brain tumor, and it could have been hereditary, and you can have seizures from the brain tumor. And I got tested very quickly if I had epilepsy, like the next day, and I didn't have epilepsy. And so I thought I knew that it was like something that I had a brain tumor. And so for about a week before I could go get the brain test, I had diagnosed myself with this brain tumor. And so I basically had
crazy, right?
Yeah, I basically had a week-long near-death experience, you know, where I was just like, it was the first one where I had so much time to think and like plan and analyze. And through that process, I basically realized, like, I want to do something that's net positive for the world. Like everything you do should actually be net positive, as like cliche as that sounds.
It's true though. It's true.
So true. Like you want to feel good about what you're building and what you're doing.
Well, not just that, the universal laws of energy.
Yeah.
Basically means that you want to be, as a human coming to Earth, you want to create more energy and produce more out of what's here. It sounds very like cliche or geeky or esoteric, but I think that like if you look at how the human race has evolved over even just the past, just recorded history, you know, maybe the past 10,000 years or whatever, you know, we've evolved as a species because of the energy that is expended by our ancestors.
100%.
If they sat around doing nothing all day, we would be in the Stone Ages, literally. But everyone put energy into things. They built new things. They created new things, companies and organizations. We output to society. And so when you leave this planet, you have to ask yourself, did I create more or less?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I create more than I consume.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And that's where, you know, profit gets a bad label nowadays. I mean, not anymore with good markets, but like, you know, people that are like, oh, you're out for profit. It's like, really, that's just like the difference between, are you creating more than you're consuming?
Exactly.
Right? And like, and it's a very net positive thing for the world.
Profit is your share of the differential between energy output and energy input.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's it.
And I started thinking about that too. And it's like, am I putting my time into things that are going to be most net positive, both for people that we're serving, our customers, and for myself and for the world, right? You kind of look at all three of those things. And what I've realized, came to the conclusion was that we were inflating people's egos on social media, you know, and that we weren't actually doing anything good.
Okay, so you decided, what did you decide to do with the business? You
shut it down.
You just shut it down?
Totally shut it down. Totally shut it. Well,
you gave up a business that made you $4 million, just shut it down.
The thing about selling it was, you know, the social media companies started catching on at that time. This was 4 years later, and so there was risk with the business for sure. So I shut it down, and I took several of our employees, and they were the first ClickUp employees, and we drove across. I also realized that I wanted to be in Silicon Valley, and I had always like dreamed about it growing up, thinking about Steve Jobs and thinking about all these people that were there. And we drove across the country, we rented a U-Haul, drove across the country, and we Googled Silicon Valley, and at the time, maybe not today, but if you Googled Silicon Valley, Wikipedia would say Palo Alto is like the center of Silicon Valley. And so we went
for a while.
Yeah, it was for a while. So we went there, and I'll never forget, I was thinking it was going to be like, Reno or Vegas with like startup signs, just like startup.
Well, it's kind of, it was kind of like that until Palantir took over.
Well, they actually had an ordinance in Palo Alto where you can't have like tech signs on up at all. So if you ever go to Palo Alto, it's like very small signs.
The highways were like Vegas. Let's be honest. Like, if you drive on the 101, it was just like freaking this tech company that take all the way into San Francisco.
Yeah.
So that was.
But I was expecting this. Is like happening downtown area with tech people everywhere. And anybody that's been to Palo Alto, it's like it's one of the sleepiest places like in the world, really.
I had a startup there as well, so I know.
Nice.
I had a couple.
We did the whole thing where we rented a house at the classic Silicon Valley startup. Rented a house.
Co-founders, or were you a solo founder?
Didn't have co-founders at that time, but had people that were founding members. People that were there with me from the beginning, and I was.
And just so you get some context, I always tell people you need a co-founder unless you're like a full stack entrepreneur by yourself. And so because of your history, which we've just discussed and heard, you are fully capable of running a company by yourself and being a solo founder.
Yeah.
But for most people, I mean, don't you agree? Like a co-founder is needed, or one or two. I
do. I think that though you need a CEO co-founder, and like with a co-founder that does not want to be CEO, and that is very there for their specialty. And I think usually that transpires like in the best forms if you have a great business CEO, product CEO, plus like a technical co-founder. And I did find my technical co-founder later, and ClickUp would not be what it is without him. He's like still today like the single most important person in the company, still solving our biggest engineering problems today.
What's strange is when I ever see these startups with like co-CEOs. Co-CEOs means that there's an ego problem, and both people want to run the company, and they couldn't agree who should run the company, and that's a red flag for me. I don't invest in any companies when I've got co-CEO titles in the.
I don't know how that works.
I don't know how that works either. It's someone has to make the decisions. Even with my company today, I've got two co-founders, and even as CEO, I'm like I always have the ultimate say. But that's the kind of the button you push at the end. Like it's the final button. You always try to resolve the issues amicably. But the moment people think that like they have an equal say, and that you can't push the button, I think it just results in a bad outcome.
I 100% agree. It's very, and I've seen it happen with many startups where you have this constant conflict, and then it's like a bad relationship, where you don't want to talk to that person and you're ignoring them, you're talking shit about them behind their back, and it creates a very toxic work environment. So, it wasn't peaches and cream for my co-founder every day, but we, at the end of the day, we trusted each other, and I trusted him on the technology side. We would get in arguments about tech stack and things like that, and ways of, doing more of like the classic kind of monolithic versus services architecture. But we also would get in arguments around business strategy and stuff, even though he was very technical and I was, more on the business side. But ultimately, I made the calls, and it ended up working out really well.
I think that's the important part. When you have co-founders, we have to agree who the final decision maker is. Mm-hmm. And I think the debate is extremely healthy. You need to have the debate. You need to argue. You need to, but be respectful of each other and realize that just because you're having debate doesn't mean the final decision maker changes. And so if you keep that in mind, I think it's a lot easier to run a company. And it's a very nuanced point. I think a lot of people don't appreciate, unless they've been in the trenches, how important the ability to have the final decision making is. And then coupling it with the willingness to listen to alternative viewpoints. Because if you come in there with this approach where I'm the decision maker and therefore my decision is the right decision, you're going to fail because you're not listening to your people. Now, when you've listened to them and you've weighed out all the options, and you know that there's a 30% probability that they're right, maybe you can argue that there's a 30% there, maybe there's a 20% of an outside event happening, and then 50% is what you think is going to happen, then you can say, okay, based upon all the information I have, I think on a risk-adjusted basis, my decision is the best decision. I'm going to choose. And people often, when they see that you've balanced your decision-making with their inputs, they respect the outcome, even if you disagree with them. But if you go over the top and go, I'm the boss, I'm the CEO, this is what I think, this is the decision, you will alienate the people who are most important to helping you build the business.
You're not going to bring anybody along for the journey that way.
Yeah.
And you got to bring everybody along for their journey. So it's important to get all the context and listen to the opinions. And sometimes I would change you've got to be able to open to change your opinion.
I've changed mine so many times.
I think there's this like meme around, if you change your opinion, you don't know what you're doing, or it's like you should change your opinions a lot.
When the facts change, you change your mind.
You got to change your opinions a lot. And I definitely did that. And I think Alex was the other thing I would say about finding technical co-founders, or if you're the technical founder, is just that it's not about building the best technology possible, right? No. It's about creating the fastest time to product market fit, the fastest time to value for customers, to revenue.
Actually. Yeah, ultimately, yeah.
And too many of the technical co-founders will sit there and say, we need to do this thing perfectly and have 100% test coverage here and this and that. And it slows things down where you have a competitor that leapfrogs you. You have another startup and come along that does it faster. It's like the single biggest thing that is important, in my opinion, to success in startups is urgency. It's like you've got to do things as fast as possible.
The second thing I would probably add is distribution. I mean, the internet solved a lot of distribution problems, especially with software and even things like services, financial services, travel, etc. But you still have to have a distribution strategy. And I think a lot of startups struggle with figuring out how do you distribute your product to the market. As much as you have the urgency, having the urgency and no distribution path is, I think it's one of the killers in business.
Very true. And it was, we went all in on organic because we didn't have
So let's talk about that.
Funding.
So you started ClickUp.
Yeah.
How did you get your product out to, can you say how many users you have?
Yeah, we have about 4 million users today.
4 million users.
Yeah.
So 4 million, these are paying customers.
We have about 1 million paying customers.
1 million paying customers.
Yeah, we have a free forever plan also.
Like the 25% conversion of your total is huge in the freemium world. Mm-hmm. How did you do that?
A lot of it goes back to all the business lessons I learned growing up as a kid and growth hacking shit. And so, ClickUp actually started as an internal tool. So I skipped over a couple things, but we actually first built, we wanted to build a social network that didn't have ego to right my wrongs from that other company. And so we built this network. It was called Memory, where it captured your memories in your life. And you could see how many followers you had, but nobody could see how many followers anybody else had. So it removed kind of the ego aspect of it. And we failed fast on that. We did like 4 or 5 months and realized it was the distribution thing too. How do you distribute it? It's like the chicken and the egg problem with social media. You got to have so many people there before it's even valuable as a product. And then we were going to build a new Craigslist, where you had great user experience, good design. You could pay in-app, remove sketchiness, have ratings and review system. And before we did it, I had been most importantly from that previous near-death experience, I also got obsessed with productivity and efficiency, and like how do you do the most with the least amount of time. And one of the things that I got down a rabbit hole with is productivity software. We started using 15 different tools for work. We used Todoist for reminders. We used Trello for boards. We used Asana for lists. We used the marketing approval software for like creative designs. We used Google Sheets, Google Docs. We had Slack and
they don't talk
and
to each
Skype.
other. They don't
talk to each other.
Yeah.
So we've got 15 different like productivity tools. It's this mess. And I could not understand why. Like one of the tools that we used the most would be we'd have Jira, Asana, and Trello. And I'd use Asana and Trello because at the time there was just a list view and a board view. Each of them had one independently. And I was like, it's the same data model. Like it doesn't make sense why you can't visualize them differently. So before we started the Craigslist thing, I was like, let's spend 1 month and build our own productivity tool that we can use in order to build the Craigslist thing. And the first thing we built was literally just tasks with being able to switch between a list view and a board view, which today is now table stakes. Everybody does that now. But at the time, nobody did that. We invented that. And we saw so much value from it at the end of that month, where it wasn't like a Slack story where it took us years to realize that this is the thing we want to build. We built it for a month and we're like, this is the thing we want to give to the world. And it was very much about how do we save ourselves time? But it flipped to that net positive thing where we're able to say, holy shit, this is like a real mission, not one of those ones that people just like put on a side of an office wall and say like, hey, we're doing this for the world. It's like, we are making the world more productive. We're saving people time. What better could we do? Is save people. We thought we were saving ourselves time. Now we're saving the world time. And that was what we were obsessed with and still are today. And so that was 5 or 6 years ago when we started that. And that was the very first version of ClickUp.
Oh, that's amazing. So, okay, so you had this first version. It had immediate product market fit. It had value for customers. You started billing them for it. They're willing to pay for it. How did you ramp the business from there?
It was just to be clear, it was a journey doing that. And so I invested, talking about double down, I invested all of the money that I made from that previous company, all of it into ClickUp. Yeah. But that took about 1.5 years to do. So for that, we built for about a little less than a year, maybe 9 months. And then we released it to the public as our first kind of MVP, but it was totally free. Everything was free. And it was all just about getting users. And so I did a lot of the growth hacking things I did before. We would use like automation on social media to reach out to people and say, hey, you want to try this productivity tool? We did a lot of organic growth through SEO. We did a ton of SEO. Nobody was doing SEO at the time, at least in our category. It was so easy to rank against Asana or Trello. Like nobody cared about it. So we started doing that, and we got a bunch of free users, and probably maybe before 2 years, maybe 1.5 years, or maybe it was about 2 into it, was when I got an overdraft notification on our bank account. And what I had been doing was I wrote my own safe notes. So I would transfer like $100,000 or $200,000 at a time from the money that I had saved into our thing. And I got, the overdraft notification, which I had gotten before, but I would just transfer some more money in. And I went to go transfer more money in, and I only had $150,000 left. And I was like, fuck, fuck, this is only going to last us.
What was your monthly expenses?
It was about that.
Oh, shit. We were
burning about $150,000 a month. So it was kind of like I was doing a monthly thing, and I'm not the finance person. Like I said, I'm not the investor. I don't really track all that stuff. And so I realized, fuck, we've got like a month, maybe a little bit more left in being able to pay.
How many employees did you have at the time?
Pay payroll. Probably 12, 13, 14.
Okay, so you had 12 employees. You have a month left. You have to declare bankruptcy in 30 days. What did you do? I was focused only on product. I was so obsessed with product that I pulled my head out and started focusing on sales and marketing. Okay. And we added paywalls. And so the first thing I did was like, what can we paywall here? Let's paywall custom fields. I started looking at some very early data we had, and custom fields seemed to be like the one. And we did these usage-based paywalls where instead of like paywalling a feature and then, you have to go do a free trial or pay to get it, nothing in ClickUp. You can sign up for ClickUp for free, and you can start using every feature that's paid. But at a certain point, you will get paywalled saying, hey, you've reached your 100 uses of this. And we would just do it based on CRUD, based on create, read, update, delete. Like we would count everything, and you can't undo it either. And that paywall, it didn't make us cash flow positive, but I think it generated probably like $20,000 in that month, just inserting that paywall. And then I think it was Halloween was our first. We still do this today. I think we're like the only software company that I know of to do this. But for every holiday, we do a promotion, because this is what I used to do at my previous company. Halloween, 50% off, right? Like Christmas, let's give buy one get one free seats. We do buy one get ones all the time at ClickUp. Like nobody fucking does this anymore. And so we did the Halloween one, and that Halloween one got us close to cash flow break even. Really?
Like that Halloween one was like 50% off, and it was. It was a standard marketing email, but if you clicked on it, it had like a note from me basically saying like, we value our early users so much. We're listening to your feedback. We're gonna try and be here forever, but we need money in order, to survive. And fortunately, I think we had like $100,000 in that month. Wow. So we were very close to cash flow break even. And the next month we were cash flow positive.
Was that MRR? So
MRR.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so monthly recurring revenue got to $100,000.
So actually, to be clear, it was $100,000 in revenue, and that month, and 60% of it was monthly transactions, 40% was annually. Okay. And then that reminds me of actually what I did was I saw that, and I was like, how do we not? like, how can we just get more people to pay up front because we get more revenue? All we cared about, we didn't give a shit about ARR versus MRR. I cared more about revenue up front. And I noticed that people paying yearly, they're paying for the whole year. So they were paying $60 a year versus, $5 a month. And I was like, how do we get more people to pay yearly? So we jacked up the monthly price to double the yearly price. And usually, I don't know why, everyone does 20% or 30% discount, but I was like, why don't we just do 50% discount? Because then everybody's going to pay for the yearly. And so then we ran, the next month was Thanksgiving. So we did the Thanksgiving promotion with the discount only applying to annual. And the price now 2-to-1 variant. So
you grandfathered all your previous other users in, right? At the price they paid for it. So the Halloween promotions, their price. Did you like when you increased the prices on the website? Did it apply to everyone going forward when renewals came around, or just the users that weren't subscribed?
It was just the users that were not subscribed that the price changed.
So if I was like an early user of ClickUp, I'd be paying the original price that.
There are still early users right now paying like 50 cents a month for us, like nothing. And we've had a lot of like finance people come in and, hey, we got to change this and stuff, and like we probably will one day, but I'm like, they're early users. They gave us a chance. Let it
I like that
out.
a lot.
Yeah. So
I'm learning a lot too, because like we, Waitroom, my company, we're busy, we're busy adding billing soon. It's free for now. Everyone can use it. And in January, we're going to start charging for it. So it's very interesting because we've debated a lot of these things, like how much should we charge the monthly? How much do we charge for annual? And you're right. A lot of people just don't discount the annual enough.
They don't discount enough. So it's not enough price. It's like, well, I'm not sure if I want to buy it for the year, so it's only 20% difference. I can always change to annual.
It's 2 months, exactly.
But if you do 2-to-1, you get a lot more people paying for annual. Now, where it comes to bite you in the ass from a SaaS perspective is that if people want to upgrade from monthly to annual, or upgrade, they want to increase their plan from monthly to annual, which usually would be a good thing in SaaS. Yeah. It's not for us, because our net retention decreases, because they're going from paying, if they're paying monthly.
It's not that you're gonna get less revenue from them.
You're actually getting less overall.
What happens if they want to add extra seats? What do you do then?
We built our own billing system.
Okay.
Because at the time, I think probably Stripe can do this today, but Stripe just added all of their big enterprise SaaS features in the past like 2 to 3 years, and this was 5 or 6 years ago. There was no way to bill people prorated and build them.
There were a couple of services out there. I think Recurly, Zora, a few others, but they.
So we looked into all of them, and Recurly, we were actually going to sign an agreement with them, and they sent me, because we had built our own promo code system for the stuff that we built, and we were just doing everything hacky, and we got a discount from them, and I'll never forget, and it was like 30% discount, and they sent me the checkout page, and the 30% discount wasn't on there. And I was like, hey, is it the 30? And they're like, well, it was applied already. Your checkout price is the same, but we applied it through the back end. And I was like, you don't show the user that there's a discount on the checkout page? Like, that's got to lead to terrible conversion. And they're like, oh, that's a feature request. And I was like, fuck this. We're just gonna build it ourselves. And so to this day, we still have our own billing system. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting. That's a whole business by itself. You could probably,
you could
probably split it out and create a whole new company out of it.
Yeah, we didn't build it in the most scalable way. We're still patching things together, but that's what we had to do, was be able to bill people on and the thing that certainly did not exist, even in like the recurring charge fees, was roll up billing. So we wanted to authorize the card when they added a new user, but we didn't want to charge them for 50 cents with the fees and stuff. We wanted to roll up to at least $5, and so we would keep like a backlog of their transaction until it was $5, and then bill them.
Fascinating. So when did you get to break even with ClickUp?
That was 2 years in, so it would have been around 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2018. So, I mean, we can fast forward a little bit. The big news obviously was when you guys, so actually I'll go into COVID for a second, because you told me this fantastic story. So I first heard about you when I was going through the San Diego airport, and I see this huge ClickUp sign. I'm like, what the hell is ClickUp? And anyway, that's how I first heard about you. How did you get that advertising?
So we during COVID, obviously nobody was rarely traveling. In fact, most airports were closed, as everyone knows, for a certain period of time. And then when people did start traveling, it was very low foot volume. So we went to the out of home advertising companies, and they're throwing everything at you, and they're like, "But just give us any money, just give us any money." I was like, "All right, we'll do
90% discount?
we'll do a big deal. We want a huge discount, but we want this discount for a year." And because we know people will start traveling again. And sure enough, so it literally was like a 90% discount. It was like rack room rates for this stuff. But we were able to get in every major airport. We had billboards everywhere. We had trains. It was all the transportation things where nobody was traveling. So nobody was buying advertising. And the markets were shitting the bed for a certain period of time there. So we bought up all the advertising we could during that, and we had a really great deal.
And you built your brand, and a lot of people found out ClickUp. It was great. And again, that's how I heard about it. So I think it was a really, really shrewd move. And then, a year later, I see this announcement, and I'm an investor in David Sachs's fund, Craft Ventures, and they let a big round into you guys.
Yeah, that was 2020, around May, June 2020.
In 2020, okay.
Yep.
And that was a $4 billion valuation.
So this one was our first one was our Series A.
Okay, sorry.
And that was 35 million raised at a 300 million valuation.
And then you did the $4 billion a year later.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So you grew the company from a $300 million company to a $4 billion company in a year.
We did 300, and then we did 6 months later we did a billion in valuation, and then we did 4 billion. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you must have you must have taken that cash and just really invested it into customer acquisition and growth to create a cheap trajectory.
We were profitable,
and profitable.
So we were profitable. So it was very different raising funds, because every meeting you guys, how much are you burning? I'm like, we're not burning any money. We're making money. And so that was a very different business that investors would see you as. It's like, holy shit, you're making money. So we always had this super efficient business motion. And then we coupled that with the growth at all cost mentality to build a great underlying business.
Far cry from living in your car outside Starbucks, man.
Yeah, I know.
It's an amazing success story.
It all happened so fast.
But I think the success is well deserved, because if you look at your journey in life and what you've gone through to get to the point where you actually had this business, it's a lot of grinding, a lot of trying things that didn't work, a lot of falling on your ass and failing as well.
We were, if you talk to early employees, they'll say I was a drill sergeant, and living in our house, we had 5 a.m. stand-ups every single day, including Saturdays and Sundays. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I had rules like no dating. There was no partying, there was no drinking, there was nothing. You were focused on this, and we're doing 5 a.m. stand-ups every single day. 5 a.m. stand-ups every single day. And there's only 6 of us that did that, but we did it for that first year and a half where we built the business. It was 6 of us in the house and 6 of us remote. So it was about 12 people.
I'm guessing all 6 people are still with you.
Yeah.
Or 5 people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing when you're part of an early stage founding of a company and you write out I think there's some sort of proportional relationship between loyalty and stage of joining. I mean, I know people who if they're one of the first 5 or 10 or 15 people, they write it out. Very few people leave. I mean, I've had people leave before for medical reasons and stuff like that, but most of the time the early guys just stick out. As long as the company keeps growing and there's opportunity for growth and you're building a great business, I mean, retaining is actually easy if you hire well in the beginning.
And it's just going through that journey together, right? Nobody else knows what that journey is like, and going through the trenches and being very unsure about yourself. I mean, I can't tell you how many times everyone said we were gonna. It feels like everyone it's kind of hyperbole, but everyone feels like you're gonna fail because you're not supposed to. We built something, and at the time where everyone said do one thing and do it well, right? Be a vertical product, focus on one thing, and we wanted to really build 10 products inside of one. Yeah. And with a very small team, and so it seemingly was impossible. But it's our number one core value today is 1% every day. It's all just about that compounding growth.
Atomic Habits. You read the book?
Yeah, of course.
They talk about that. So there's if you can prove yourself 1% a day, you're gonna 4x in a year.
Yeah, exactly. There's another book called The Slight Edge that we require all of our employees to read. And it really is true. Like it sounds stupid saying it, but it's just like you can't move mountains overnight, but you can do 1% every day. And if you're doing 1% net positive every single day, it adds up over time.
Absolutely.
And it's that improvement in efficiency that matters too the most. And I'm not just talking about like business efficiency, it's improvement in productivity. You've got to be able to do more with less than your competitors, because most of the time your competitors are way more funded.
Yeah, exactly. You have to work within capital constraints and resource constraints.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's next for ClickUp?
The classic journey of privately, funded companies goes to going public, and so that's definitely a big milestone for us. And I don't know when that will be. We're very very much focused on finishing the kind of original vision of the product right now. But I'm the product founder. I'm classic product founder. I still live and breathe product every single day, and
I know the feeling.
yeah, and there's still a lot we want to build. I think that there is missing gaps in communication today. I think there's a lot of communication. We've talked about this that happens outside of work, but I think that the future of productivity tools is definitely more all in one, and that was something that we were told.
I had the same belief actually, and I think every category is going to be moving towards all in one because the vendor rationalization is happening across the industry. So you have companies are looking at, well, we're paying these guys for this, we're paying these guys for that. Why are we paying 3 different companies for the same type of tool? And so the companies that can move the fastest to integrate all these features and sort of be more feature complete are going to win. So guys like you, where you're basically a full stack productivity tool, I think when people start looking at the bills and start, let's say the economy goes into recession, you're going to cut the stuff that you don't need from the vendors that don't provide a full stack solution.
And everyone can argue about how valuable AI will be in 6 months, a year, 2 years. But what you can't argue is that over time, you will be able to develop faster through AI.
Yeah.
And when you think of if you believe that, which is a fact in my opinion, then your companies and businesses, they're only going to build more, right?
Yeah.
Products are only going to build more, not less. They're going to build more.
But
So you have to think about, like, I think building platforms, true platforms,
Absolutely.
where there is more and more and more on the platform, because it's going to be more about where are the users spending their time in the day, and adding more to that ecosystem.
I've been watching you guys. You've been launching a whole bunch of new AI features. Do you want to talk about what are your favorites or what do you think is really exciting?
Yeah, AI Project Manager. And so AI Project Manager is, it was debatable from a comms perspective whether or not we call this, because project manager is one of our big target markets. But the reality is it enables project managers to do their job much more efficiently and effectively. And for teams or individuals that don't have project managers, it gives you one of your own. And so simple things like I think writing a stand-up and having to write a progress update is so inefficient. It's such an inefficient part of your day. Like, why do I need to write down what I did as an individual contributor and then send it to my manager and go back and look back on the week and see what was done over a period of time? These are things that are relatively simple for AI to solve. And so that's what we've started focusing on, are productivity tools for AI. And it goes along with making our mission of making people more productive. Like, it's like these things are real nowadays. Whereas a year ago, 2 years ago, AI you couldn't really find many practical use cases for it unless you had a really large team that was doing some large scale, like, machine learning modeling. But for now, I mean, it's become real. And I think there's a lot of things that go with productivity. And so certainly stand-ups and progress updates and writing for you usually have to write reports for executive teams, right? As a manager, I got to write it to my superior. That VP needs to write another report. So we've automated the way to we don't have to write progress reports anymore. You don't have to write stand-ups anymore. We already have all of the data of what you are working on and what other tools you've connected to ClickUp, and so we can accurately say what you've done for a given period of time, not on an individual level only, but also team level and an organization level. So our ultimate goal of productivity, AI actually is measuring productivity and being able to improve it through insights that we give you through the AI Project Manager.
That's amazing. I think the stuff you're doing on AI is going to set you guys apart from a lot of the other players out there, because the big companies are struggling to move on AI fast enough.
They're so slow.
They're so slow.
They're so slow. I've thrown us onto the bus so many times. We've got some videos making fun of them. We always poke fun at our competitors.
Yeah.
But Asana, they've been
don't worry,
talking.
I poke fun at Zoom because they keep copying our features.
Yeah, that's happened to us.
Badly, badly.
Happens to us many times, and some of our competitors will say we're copying them. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I woke up and you guys took this shit from me.
Yeah, exactly. We were there first. We did this first.
Yeah, like, we did this. And just like switching between views. Again, that goes back to list view and board view. If you go back in the Wayback Machine, we were the first people to have it, like objectively. Yeah, now the Mondays and Asanas and Notions,
funny.
and everybody
Zoom's
has
even
it.
started using some of our stock photo characters in their videos. I'm like, guys, ready? So I get it.
It's always, but you got to punch up, not down, right? And that's what we've always done is tried to punch up. And but some competitors, I mean, Asana's been talking about AI for 4 years now. They sent this video out about how they're gonna have this AI work tool and nothing. They didn't ship anything. Yeah. And now you have these models off the shelf available, and they're still not shipping anything. So I wonder, that's another like philosophical question, is like, why do tech companies over time, especially public companies, they stop innovating? They go so slow.
Well, you know what it is? It's the corporate mentality of being inclusive. So when they started innovating on something, well, we have to have a meeting. We have to invite this person, and this person from that department, and the whole product team. And you know what? It's a 15-person meeting. Let's go and figure out how to build this product with 15 people. And you and I both know that doesn't work.
Yeah,
it doesn't work. And it's because they want to. It's like it's political pandering, right? If I don't invite this person to the meeting, they're going to be pissed that I started this project without them. They're in charge of this type of product, but it's a lot of politicking in big companies. And small companies were like, we don't care. Let's just get it done and ship out to the market quickly.
It is so hard to keep that mentality as you scale, and we made a lot of mistakes there, and we changed a lot.
Spotify's done a good job, by the way, with their pods. Like they have this pod system which works really well, and you have ownership over certain aspects of the Spotify app.
You got to be. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned was, and it actually is similar to college, like the perception of your college degree. Yeah. Don't let the company history of where that person worked also bias you.
Yes.
Just because they went to your most admired Airbnb of the world or Slack or whatever it was, it's very easy to say, okay, this person's going to be a hitter because they were at this company, and rarely does it work out that way.
So like, I'll say one thing, which is and this is purely from my experience, I think the product CEO founder is the most critical part of building. Once it becomes a corporate, you lose that person. You don't have the Steve Jobs coming in from over the top to tell people this is a bad idea. And so then the sort of people who are on the ground, they kind of lose direction. And so with Waitroom right now, I've got my co-founder Margaret, who's a product co-founder. She's effectively the chief product officer and designer for all intents and purposes. And we get along really well because we're both passionate about the product, and she's an amazing designer. And what I've noticed from working with her and other people in the past is that when the founder one of the founders or two of the founders have a strong product sense, you can build product faster. The moment you have a situation where you've hired someone from X named Ivy League school who's now a product manager, it's going to slow down. It's going to be like 5 times slower.
100%. And that's what happened to us, is we built, both on the engineering and product side, we hired the people that had the pedigree and that had done it before. And they added so much unnecessary process, and it wasn't fun anymore, frankly. It also just wasn't fun building. And this was a story of our past year and a half or so, is we hired a lot of these people and everything slowed down. It became not fun to work there anymore. And there was just like, we lost a lot of the culture, I feel like. And so I feel like I had one opportunity to blow it up, and I blew it up a couple months ago and made a lot of changes and let a lot of leaders go and let a lot of. How
many employees do you have now?
970, about 1,000.
1,000. Oh, how much were you at peak?
1,200.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's not bad. I mean, that's kind of in the Jack Welch, like you got to get the bottom 10% out every year type of mark, right? We've
kind of probably curated the bottom like 30% or so, and then rehired. Bringing more people in.
You have to do that.
But it was also just about this move in particular was about really blowing up the organizational structure, and I think it's unilaterally I've seen, and there are some exceptions, but most companies they do the same thing. They have these squads, and they've got a product manager, they've got an engineering manager, and then they've got engineers. Some of them have a designer, some of them don't. And it's just like it just doesn't. The PMs don't have enough context. They come in and they learn 6 months of your space, and then they start learning how the customer works. So we have experts on every product area, and usually they're through acquisitions. So if we have a time tracking team, we've made an acquisition of somebody that's built one of the best time tracking tools, and we put them in charge of time tracking. So they know the customers, they know everybody. We also have kind of I think maybe how you were referenced, kind of this more monarchy style of product development, where we have a small nucleus of people that are making pretty much all the product decisions, and then
I think how it should work.
I do too.
Yeah,
as you make it faster, as long as it's the right people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? As long as it's the right people.
As long as you trust the people who make the decisions. Yeah.
And then instead of product managers, they're more like project managers, right? Where they're kind of executing on the grand scheme of the vision. And we are a design-led organization. So just like you were saying, my right-hand person and product is this guy named Horace, and he's a designer, and he's head of design, but he's also head of product. And you have to have an exceptional in any large-scale product that isn't like doesn't have, as long as you have competition, you have to have exceptional design. Design is like everything. And how I was talking about earlier about punching up on brand, you can punch up through design, and the brand matters so much.
I strongly believe that. I'm always a big fan of design-led product development. Like, my experience in the past with engineering is the engineers will build. There's a lot of wasteful engineering when they don't have the actual final designs done, because they don't understand what and as an engineer, that's what I studied. If you don't know what the final product looks, you waste a lot of time writing code that's irrelevant, because the functionality isn't in the final design. And so design-led product for me is always critical, because it doesn't have to be high fidelity. You can just have like, hey, this button does this button does this is what the user's going to see, and you go write the code behind that. You save a ton of time versus the engineer going, what happens if this needed? What happens if this is needed? And that just slows down everything. Yeah. You can build it later. You don't need to do it right now for MVP and testing. We generally build the full design of something first, just like you're saying. We have like a vision doc. Design first.
But what we do is scope down things into 2 weeks. And it's not just a sprint to do 4 sprints and then build a feature. It's how do we build functionality of this design in 2 weeks, and something that we can use in 2 weeks. And it really forces you to think critically about like, what are the most important things of this feature that we're building, and just start. Starting is like the hardest part, where so many companies, and again, we've made this mistake where we hire people from the outside, from these large, Googles of the world, Microsofts of the world. They get stuck in this planning phase of going back and forth with product scope and requirements and stuff. And instead, like, just get started. And like, that's our philosophy, is really just get started. And if you do that for 2 weeks, you learn so much, and you're able to build, I think, a lot faster.
It's great points. Okay, so let's go into, I'm going to go into some other quick rapid fire questions for you. Okay. So, share with our audience, what's your top book, podcast, or article recommendation?
The one I mentioned, that the Slide Edge is it's actually a really quick read, and again, it's one we require all of our employees to read.
And we'll link that in the show notes below. So
I really love that one. It's actually pretty simple and pretty straightforward. On kind of the mindfulness side of things, the Surrender Experiment. It's by this guy named Michael Singer. Okay. It's an incredible book, where it is yes, it's about mindfulness. Yes, it's about just going through all of the journeys that happen in life. Everything happens for a reason, but it's also written by, and I'll try not to give it away, but it's written by this guy who actually created a several billion-dollar tech company through kind of going through 2 years of living in the woods and going through his mindfulness journey.
I'm going to buy this book today.
And it was and he also has an FBI story. Like it's one of my favorite books.
Okay, so that's definitely on my to-read list. Thank you. What's your go-to habit that you think everyone should implement in their daily routine?
My newest one, I do cold plunges every day now.
Dude, how do you do cold plunges? It's freezing.
I'm not the person that does.
I can't even get below my knees on that.
Everyone does. How many minutes I'm going to increase my minutes every day. I do 1 minute. That's it. And I do it right when I.
What did you start at? What temperature did you start at?
It's at 50 degrees.
At 50. Okay.
Yep.
Did you start higher and work your way down to 50?
This is I got this one on Shark Tank. So there is a cold plunge.
Which one is it? Which brand?
I think it's just called like the cold plunge or something like that. But it's on Shark Tank. It's whatever. It's like a monkey logo, and They only go down to 50 degrees. So I just put it on the lowest that it had anyway. But I wake up with a cold plunge. Like literally every single day I wake up and I get on that for 1 minute and I have narcolepsy. Technically. And it's not that most narcolepsy isn't, it's like everyone thinks that Tourette's is just cussing. Most Tourette's actually isn't cussing. It's the same thing with narcolepsy. Everybody thinks that narcolepsy is like you just fall asleep instantly. Most narcolepsy is actually you just have chronic fatigue and your brain doesn't sleep when you're sleeping. So I used to have a hard time waking up several years ago, and I did other routines before this, but 6 months ago or so I got into cold plunges, and it's like, I swear it's just like, I don't know.
A minute every day.
Well, I do a minute in the mornings, and then I'll usually do a minute at lunch, and sometimes I'll do a third one.
Do you have one in the office?
Only at my house. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
We should get one in the office. I don't know if HR would like that.
Yeah, I'm sure they would. Okay, so I've been looking into cold plunges. There's a few of them out there. I've been like trying to find one that has like a temperature dial, so I can start at like 65 and then like do that for a week and then go to 64 and 63 and work my way down. Because I think if I jumped into a 50, I would just lose my mind.
I swear, if you like if you just think about it as a minute, just like getting in, and you can get through that. You really can. It's just doing it a couple times.
I'm gonna go buy one. What I'll do is I'm gonna link the one that you recommended, and I'm gonna go buy one, and it may be the same one or it may be another one, and I will link that in the show notes as well and get people onto the cold plunge thing because everyone's freaking doing it. So I feel like I'm missing out on something.
I love it. But I've journaled for 11 years now.
Journaling as well?
Okay. Every single day for 11, at least once a day. Most of the time, twice a day for 11 years. And
paper and pen, or you
paper and pen, 100% paper. Everyone thinks I'm like the techie that writes it down on the computer or like a Remarkable tablet. I love Remarkable tablet, but no, I use paper and pen. So I actually have hard journals for everything. But the secret for me has been at middle of every year and at the end of every year, I used to go back and reread every single journal, and I would go back and you learn. It's the only way, I guess, maybe unless you did like audio transcriptions every day, but the only way for you to really go back and think how you were thinking. You go back to like the phase what you were thinking and how you were feeling and what the problems you were going through were, and you can relearn all of the problems by doing that. Now, I have too many. It takes too long to do it. So I just reread the year before and the current year. Yeah. But I'll go back to the previous ones where pages I've marked with stars, and I'll go back and read like the important parts of it. But I swear that probably is the one that changed my life the most, I think, is journaling.
Really? In what way?
It enables you to just relearn lessons. I think so many times you learn lessons and you're like, you have this aha moment and you forget it. Like over time, you forget everything.
Yeah, you're right.
And there's also this thing called, I think it's called the hedonic treadmill, of where you basically always move the goalpost, right? It's like, and as entrepreneurs, we're like accustomed to moving. You always move the goalpost. Yeah. When you can go back in your journals, you can realize you can see what you're thinking and writing before you move to the goalpost, and it brings you back to that time where you're like, damn, like I'm really appreciative for where I am right now because I didn't even have this goalpost before.
I'm going to have to do an electronic one because my handwriting is so terrible, I wouldn't be able to know what I said.
I'm left-handed, so mine's pretty bad too. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Let's go with what's the best bit of financial advice you've ever received?
I think it was, I was very skeptical of investors coming in from North Carolina. I always heard about, Steve Jobs got screwed over by his board and things like that. So I was very skeptical, and we had, once you build something, you always have investors reaching out. Whether or not they want to invest, that's a different story. But they're always kind of reaching out and trying to get info about you and things like that. And so we had that a lot. And I forget who said this, and maybe it was just in a book or something. But it was, only take investors that you would marry. Basically, that you would you want to be on the journey with them for 10 years. You would go out, have a glass of wine.
How do you know? Like I've been investors at first glance, meet them once or twice. They seem like great guys, and then when the shit gets tough and hits the fan, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy is a pain in the ass.
I think we did a lot of investor dating, and there was a huge difference between investors that had run a company before or built a company versus investors that haven't.
That's true.
That are,
that's true.
Generally speaking, the Ivy League people that go to the Ivy League.
This is the same reason why I get emailed all the time by VCs in Silicon Valley, and every time I take a meeting with an associate or even a principal, I just feel dirty afterwards. I want to have a shower. It's really bad, and I just got to the point now where I just can't stand these people because they've never built companies. They came out of the Ivy League schools, and they sit there and they try and filter through deals. So like, and they're always trying to hit you up, right? They're always emailing, hey, we'd love to invest. We're from XYZ big name VC. We want to invest in your company. And like, I don't want to talk to these people. And then just doing their job of doing deal flow and stuff. But like, I recommend most entrepreneurs don't talk to these people.
I agree. I think it's largely a waste of time. The other
build the relationship. Like there's no freaking relationship. You don't give a shit unless the metrics are good.
Exactly. And the investment advice I wish I would have had would be a no answer means no.
Yeah.
If they don't give you an answer, it means no. And I swear there are no investors say no anymore. Yeah. Because they don't want to be known as saying no to the Facebook.
I didn't get back to him in time. Sorry. Yeah. We didn't pass, but we didn't, we missed the email.
They never passed. They never say no.
Yeah.
And we had, we'll never forget, we did a dance in San Francisco and going up there and talking to several investors. And nobody said no. Except for one, Andreessen Horowitz. They said no. And this was when we were really small, probably like 7 or 8 million ARR, and we were asking for a 50 million valuation back then, and I only went up there.
It's quite reasonable, actually.
Very reasonable, but I thought I didn't really understand what multiples were or anything. But I went up there because we had all these investors saying, "We'll give you money. We'll give you money. Just come up and talk to us." And I go up and talk to them. And like nobody does it. And Andreessen Horowitz wrote me a really heartfelt email. I believe it was David Yulovich who wrote a really long, great email, like a couple pages long, basically just saying, hey, we are not sure yet if you can be a category leader. You've done great here, and here. Here's what we're not so sure about. And I tried to do all of those things that he said we're not so sure about, but I also was turned off by investors after that. So that was where I was like, I'm done with investors until Sachs reached out.
I mean, David's different. He's a different.
David's totally different. Kraft is different in general.
Kraft
they're a great firm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an investor. I'm technically an investor in ClickUp because I'm investing in the fund and investing in you guys. So, I like the decisions that they've made. It is true. Like when I moved down to San Diego from the Bay Area, and you're here now as well. Like people ask me why. I'm like, well, it's like California is amazing, and it's as far as I can get from the VCs of Silicon Valley. Like I'm 20 miles from the border of Mexico, right? So literally, it's the furthest spot away from Silicon Valley's VCs. And Bill Gurley had a talk the other day where he says the reason Silicon Valley is successful is it's like 2,800 miles away from Washington D.C. So for the same reason, I like building companies here. It's the same reason, in a sense, like you just get far away from where the bullshit happens. And again, I've got VCs in my company. I've had VCs for years. They're not all bad. Don't get me wrong. But generally, if you're a startup founder and you're just basically spending all your time pitching VCs, that's time you're not spending on your business. And it's a waste of time generally. And, most of the time, I guess like the seed and pre-seed investors are very different because they're just taking a portfolio approach, like spreading cash. The moment you get to series A, B, C, and D, it's a shit show. And you know this, and I know this. And so you have to be very selective about the investors you take on board.
You absolutely do, and there's some times where you can't be selective. Where I've talked to founders that they only get one term sheet, and they're questioning whether or not they should take it because they don't really feel like they're the right investor for them. And I always say, look, if you need it, you need it, and that's the reality of it. But take as little as you need from them if you don't feel like they're the right investor.
Best advice I ever got was a friend of mine who actually got this advice from someone else, but he says, take as little as possible at the lowest possible valuation. So it's just the discipline of taking less capital and giving investors a better deal. You get the right investors on board, and you get more discipline on how you use their capital. Whereas you take too much capital at too high a price, you're stuck for a long time in that. And so, yeah.
I think that the other thing that is really important is that going along with what we said around colleges and like pedigrees in general, it's not necessarily the brand that is the better investor.
It's the people. And
we had, during our Series B, we had an offer from Sequoia and Excel together.
Oh, wow.
At a 800 million valuation. We had an offer from Georgian and Kraft Ventures, who were our two Series A investors at $1 billion. And they came down and did the wine and dine thing, and like, we're the best investors in the world, and these are all the reasons why you're going to choose both of us together. And everybody around me was like, "You are so stupid for not, taking the Sequoia deal as we were doing it." Even our existing employees were like, "Why wouldn't you do that?" I was like, I just, it doesn't feel right. And I like our existing investors. I know them well.
Relationships go a long way.
And we signed the term sheet that day, and the other firms called and they were like, "So what are we gonna do?" And I was like, "Yeah, we already signed the term sheet. We're done." And they're like, "What?" They're like, "We would have come up to, $1 billion." And I was like, "I don't actually care."
Yeah.
I think it's more about the investors that you like doing, and nothing against, those are two great firms. And I actually like highly recommend them, and especially in early stage, because they actually have all of the resources there for you to. There are differences between firms that say they have resources and don't have resources. And Sequoia and Excel, they actually both have really good resources. And the brand also, there is a such thing that we missed out on early on by not doing this, of the halo effect.
Yes.
Of around, if you take a deal from one of those big name brands, you're able to get better quality talent. You really are. And we missed out on that from doing that. But like, the opportunity cost for me, I think was the right thing.
Yeah, that's a smart move. Okay, what's a common misconception about business or life that you'd like to set the record straight on? And I know we've spoken about a bunch today, but what would you say if we haven't spoken about?
God, for me there's a lot. I think, I think there's always this like notion of the more resources you get, the easier your job is. And it's like, you can solve more problems with more resources, and it really just isn't necessarily true. I think in some ways, like, being very resource frugal is actually a better way to solve problems.
ST is the mother of innovation.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I didn't really realize that for a while. So it's like you can actually frame that in a couple ways. And the other way is like your own job, right? It's like, my job's going to be easier, when you have more people, and it's just not the case. It's like the problems your job as a founder, I think early on maybe isn't necessarily problems every day, problem solver every day. Maybe it is more product. And I like to think my job still is a lot more product, but most of my job is solving problems. And every day I wake up, you get hit with more problems. By the end of the day, you try to solve them, and then you're like, yes, I solved these problems. Next day, you get hit with a bigger problem, and there's always another one. And I think you have to look at your job as like embracing solving problems. Like, you are the master problem solver, and it doesn't matter how many people you hire around you, or the best person that is at sales or marketing. It's like, you are the ultimate problem solver.
Yep. Chief firefighter.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. If you could go back in time and meet one person in history, who would it be and why?
I gotta say Steve Jobs. I'm always just a big Steve Jobs person. He was very inspiring to me.
He was enlightened as well.
Yeah. So, he had the balance of I've met Richard Branson a few times.
Likewise. Great guy.
Amazing guy.
Absolutely, he was my
amazing
hero
guy.
growing up as a kid.
Same.
And when I went to Necker Island to meet with him, I'm like, I had dinner with the guy. He's incredible.
It's one of those people where you see from the outside and you're like, man, I wish he's what he's like in person. He's better in person.
He's so personable.
Yeah.
And he's so smart. He's like, even at his age today, he's razor smart.
Razor smart. And he's a great example for entrepreneurs of somebody that treats employees and customers
Absolutely.
right.
With respect and dignity.
Totally respect and dignity. Built a huge business, but also has amazing family. And
His family values are incredible. I mean, his son was there with his grandson.
Yep.
I mean, it's just unbelievable how close he is to his family.
It's so great of a living day entrepreneur. Like, I really expect Richard Branson. Obviously Elon too. But I just know that I err towards more of like what I want to create for myself is like the Richard Branson life.
Okay, I relate to that.
And Steve Jobs was, he was very, like you said, enlightened, but he had this unreal kind of urgency and innovation aspect to him, and I really admired that.
He knew he would die young.
He did.
I think he knew that he wasn't going to make it to like an old age.
You know, and I never thought I would make it to 30. Right? I had 5 near-death experiences, and I always 30 was.
You told us 3.
30 was like I'll leave 2 for another one.
Next time, okay.
I always thought at 30 was like my age where I never would make it to, and I did, and I'm very grateful for it. But I still think I'm one of those people that may die young also.
Well, I hope not.
I hope not as well.
You've been a huge inspiration, and you're doing some amazing work in the, both locally in San Diego and obviously internationally with your products. So, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been amazing. It's been a phenomenal conversation, and I think people can find you on it's obviously ClickUp.com is what your company, but do you have social tags you want to mention?
DJ Curfew.
DJ Curfew.
I never changed it.
Really, on Twitter?
I never
Twitter,
changed
Instagram?
it. DJ Curfew and
Okay.
Instagram. DJ
Perfect.
Curfew.
Great.
I had our comms people tell me to change it so many times.
No,
I'm like,
no, it's
I'm not changing
I
it.
don't blame you. Thanks.
Thanks
so
for
much.
having me, Vinny.
Cool. Awesome. Cheers.
Cheers.